I'd like to hear that more from the public. And I've been hearing both sides. We definitely want to maintain the history and legacy, as Haider said. But I look at it, I've seen a lot of parents who are saying, I want my son or my daughter to go to a school where they can breathe cleaner air and be in a state-of-art chemistry lab. And I haven't been to Bloomfield High School, but I've seen their visual tour of their buildings. They look amazing. So, and you give them the same per pupil funding, and perhaps sometimes better, than that you give communities like ours in Detroit, which I fear is, obviously that's another discussion too with the state legislatures, but it just, I hope that residents would understand that if we're gonna be asking for this money, that we are an older community. I think we have to really put that context. We can't be comparing, we're not comparing apples to apples. We're definitely comparing apples to oranges here. And unless there's some kind of equity on the state level and the federal level, and we come back on the same playing field, then we can definitely talk about other things, but it's, until this is corrected, fortunately, our schools are gonna be worrying, and we're gonna be always maintaining very older buildings. As I mentioned, I was at Eunice today, and Eunice looks beautiful. And I would hope that all of our students would go to a school like Eunice. But unfortunately, we don't have unlimited amount of money.
Trustee Thorpe?
Following up on what Trustee Moses said, I would never hold my breath to wait for the state to help us. This, they're not necessarily helping us like you're saying. And I rather control my fate than leave it in somebody else's hands
Absolutely.
anytime.
Yeah, we definitely have to sometimes come to reality and
We can keep
realize-
advocating.
Yes, we keep advocating, but we're really, really frustrated because there's clearly inequity here of funding. Because when they're doing the funding formula, they're not taking the buildings that we're in, or even in Detroit, or other, underprivileged, underserved communities where they go to buildings where the ceiling is almost falling. I mean, you can just Google the photos of Detroit public schools and see the conditions they are in. And it's very, very unfortunate that we live in a society that we were saying justice for all, but it seems like it's not.
Dr. Malika wanted to add something.
So just wanted to mention two things. There was the school funding collaborative that Tom and I presented on, and that was a data point, but there's also an initiative called Launch Michigan, and I'm involved through my Middle Cities affiliation as president, and then my MASA. Launch Michigan is a collaborative with MASB is a part of it, the union officials, we have business, and we have philanthropy. At the same token, though, it is something that they're looking at changing the school funding formula, recognizing that the system is broken, recognizing that we have teacher shortage and other things. But I would still say it has to still go through the legislature. There's some talk of maybe down the line ballot proposals, but as Trustee Thorpe said, in the short-term immediate, we're not sure, but it is positive that there is at least discussions going on with different aspects of the community, in that area with Launch Michigan. I'd also just want to comment on, with our old infrastructure, with the investment in HVAC and what Mark and Tom have done with bringing in the HVAC technicians, they're ensuring, and they've presented before this group during COVID, to make sure that with our old buildings that we have high-quality filtration systems and air, handling, and we are now investing further with that federal dollars for that factor, which you can, as it's been discussed, because of the COVID funding, tied to COVID funding. So I think our team does a great job with the old infrastructure they have to make sure that there is high quality and we don't deteriorate, but we're still up against what I was talking about with the bathroom. There are things you'd like to do, and then there's things that you have to do for safety and security and other measures. So, thank you.
Trustee Watts?
Well, and I think going back to what Trustee Moses said, we tell our kids, what do you need versus what do you want? And I think, I'm looking at the list that the committee put together, and the number one need is, bathrooms and security and heating and ventilation, but I know we have the HVAC and the ESSER funds for that, plumbing, roofing, like at the very, 4.7 was a weight room. So I think we're trying to meet the basic needs of what children need to feel secure in school. And it's frustrating that we can talk probably another session about the inequities of the funding for our schools. But, the committee came up with things that our needs, lighting, electrical, air conditioning, so.
I also want to mention, if I may, is that we also have inequities in our own district. And some schools, unfortunately, are very old, and that's the nature of it, the thing. And we do have some classrooms that have a lot of issues, and I appreciate, the administration getting those classrooms fixed. But we want to get to a level where we can have a playing level field, where all of our schools are at least at comparable conditions. Obviously, I'm being a realist or dreaming here, but hopefully we can pay attention to the schools that are not falling off, but they have a lot of infrastructure needs, and giving them the attention that they deserve because they still house our students. Until one point we have to decide, and we have to make that difficult decision of when do we, it's like if you have an old pet, when do you put this pet to sleep? When do you take this building down and build them a brand new one? And Ann Arbor, obviously they're a huge district, and they have the funds now to tear down all 4 of their buildings, huge buildings, and building state-of-the-art buildings.
But they did it because they passed several bonds.
They passed a $1 billion,
Yes.
as
Yeah.
Dr. Maleko just said.
Exactly.
And that was right before, I think they were going at the same time
the
that we were
same
going
time
for
we
our
went for ours,
2019. And I know folks in our community, they're saying, I'm willing to pay for more taxes for newer buildings. But we still have to realize that a lot of people are still hurting. And assessment values, as Trustee Barry said, they've increased a lot. And I've actually went to the Board of Review for a friend, and his taxable value doubled from the year before because he bought the house in Dearborn. And that's another reality with uncapping, that when you buy a brand new house, it's gonna come,
That's why Prop A is.
Prop A did.
did it.
So, I mean, we need to kill Prop A, but that's another discussion.
One thing I would just like to say too about disappointing that the previous bond failed. We would get a lot bigger bang with our buck had that one passed, because right now costs are up.
Inflation is-
Interest rates up, inflation's up, and that rises over time automatically. Well, now we're in a situation where it's not just rising over time, it's exploding over time. Trustee Barry?
Ann Arbor's been mentioned a few times tonight. Ann Arbor community made a decision.
Yes.
We're gonna invest in our public schools. They understand that there is a connection between their public schools and the value of your homes. I don't know, we dropped the ball a few years ago. We didn't get that message out. But the last couple of weeks, everybody I've talked to had that discussion, and they're like, oh, wow, that does make sense. So that's gonna be up to us how we put that out there. Pretty much, that's exactly what the Ann Arbor community said. We're gonna go out for $1 billion. We're gonna invest in our schools. We're gonna invest in our future, our students, and understanding that when you do that, property values go up, and they have been going up a lot faster than most of the surrounding area.
And we have some amazing programs and things to tout. We really have a lot to offer our students, but we have to have the infrastructure to take care of that, and the buildings to house those programs, and have to be able to take pride in every aspect of our district. Anyone else? Okay, I think we are way behind, so let's see what's next.
So just the last thing in your sheet is just a copy of what the BIP committee, just so you have a color bigger copy so you can read it. So that's the last thing. So going forward, again, we gotta look at short-term and long-term. It cannot just be one or the other, because no matter what, we have to have a plan going forward. So keep that in consideration. Some of the things on your agenda is some of the things, suggested items of what to give the administration direction on. You know, do we want to go forward with the November 22 ballot? Because then it sets a timetable for us that we have to make decisions by. You know, what will the millage rate be? You know, those are the things. Upgrade versus new, we've had a lot of conversation about that. And the high school option. That is out there and it's still a valid topic to decide what we're going to do with that. So I just want to kind of throw some ideas of what, when the board does give administration direction on some of these items. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, and then we are moving on to next item, please.
Public comment?
Yeah,
Yes, hold on, I'm trying to find our agenda for today so I can,
so you can read the.
yes, I'm sorry, too many papers. Give me 1 minute. Underneath everything. Citizen participation. Citizens wishing to address the board by submitting a blue card to the secretary may speak at this time. The board may not be in a position to respond to non-agenda items, therefore speakers should not anticipate an immediate response to their comments or questions. For the benefit of all concerned, do not mention the names of students or school district employees. Please keep your comments as brief as possible. The board president reserves the right to limit times. We have one blue card. Mrs. Stephanie Butler would like to come to speak to the board about the bond.
Hello. Not sure, I'm kind of speaking half and half as a committee member and then secondly as a parent taxpayer. So, the presentations were all really good in the committee. I think, however, the walkthroughs that we did were eye-opening. And I don't think that we spent enough time talking about what we saw in those buildings. Somebody had mentioned ceiling tiles falling in Detroit. We saw that on our tours. So it's not, that. I mean, that's here. So that's a shame that
I did mention that, but go ahead.
we're talking about, I was in kindergarten classrooms with the pipes exposed, kind of burst in half with where the filling and stuff is coming out. Those are kindergarten classrooms. You should have seen the bathrooms that were in there. Security wise, we didn't get to mention in the committee, but I started really thinking about this, and there's something called the night guard. Oxford High School had the night guard. Do you know, I looked into that after I found out, like, they all said how well it worked, you know, when everything had happened, everybody was locked down. Those things are only $35 per door. $35 per door. We didn't even talk about anything like that. Those, to me, more than metal detectors, I think, because especially some of the parents we've heard talk at board meetings about the special ed classrooms, how they're in the back and you can just kind of like come in and no one checks you and you can just open the door. So I think those, you know, that special group is at risk too. And I feel like even if we went out and kind of fundraise on our own, we could do the $35 for each and every classroom that we have, because I think that's the least we can do when we're talking about security. There was a question about the new versus old, and how that was worded to us and how that was presented to us on a question, but it was exactly that. It wasn't one or the other. It was, you have to rate, like, do you want to fix the schools that we have at a 1 to 10, or do you want to build? It was new versus old. They didn't present it to us where we could do two different choices. Like, so that's why there was the difference, because I think about 90% of the committee, when I'm talking, felt that we did have the need for a new high school. We're overcrowded. We got 30-something students in each classroom. There was a time in this year that my daughter didn't even have a seat in computer class. And so when you're talking about learning and the disruption in the classroom, if you were to build another high school and take the weight off the teachers in the classrooms, that's gonna be so much more of a better learning environment for our kids. And I just think that we have the space, we have the land to build onto. We have big lots. And then I wanted to talk about the district assessment because I've been asking, that's something that I was really curious to see. And we were told that that was done, except for it needed to be reviewed by third party. Now I'm hearing that they still have to meet with, but that's not the information that we got. We got information that it was completed. And then you asked if there was another form, something to compare it to if this 2022 one was not done. And there was one done in 2019, and I have not been able to find that one either. So this is me as a parent. I think this is where the problem comes in with passing stuff like this. It's not that we don't want to see better, but we want the needs addressed. We don't want the falling ceiling tiles. Like, you could see the things that were really important to us. Bathrooms, number one, that's really bad. You know, but I would like to see, and I'm just saying this for you, for the board members, my opinion, a broken down list. Bathrooms is very vague. What does that mean? Is it a whole renovation? Is it stall doors? Is it hand soaps? You know, I'd like to see that broken down on where that's gonna go, because I know that's one thing from the 19 bond that was really, that failed, is that people really didn't know where it was going. So I'd like to see that, you know, that's just my opinions. But other than that, the committee was everyone really we were on the same page. We were all on the same page. So I think you'll hear more from committee members in the future, depending on where this goes. But we're excited to have been a part of it. It was a really eye-opening experience. Parents need to get involved in going to the schools and kind of seeing what's going on and putting our heads together to see how we can fundraise more money. I think that's really important. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Butler, for your comments and your time on the committee.
Next, Sam Hamadi would like to come and speak to the board on the bond.
Hi, you guys. Thank you for taking me on such a short notice, but work has been sort of hectic and it's been hard to attend some of these meetings. I heard Ms. Butler speak, and I heard some of you guys speak, the ones that were speaking when I did first walk in. I don't know that it's about a new building right now or a renovation of a bathroom. I think it's beyond that. I think if we really wanted to fix the Dearborn school system, we would have had to do it 20 years ago. We would have had to educate the parents about 20 years ago. I think at this point, we're late. I think the residents of Dearborn are sort of fed up of taxes. I don't think they're ready to invest in anything anymore. I think we're having people, you know, sort of upset at the school systems, at the city, at the lack of, you know, at the lack of everything that we're not receiving. One, in the schools, teachers aren't attending. They're not there educating the kids. Half the times they're substitutes. Sometimes the superintendent's in the classroom. Sometimes it's the principal in the classroom. We're taking teachers out of the classrooms and making them administrators, which kind of defeats the purpose of being a teacher, going to the school to teach. Instead, you're being, you know, brought up to here instead of being in the classroom where you make a difference. And these are the good ones. And then we're losing them to other districts, whether it be Allen Park, Dearborn Heights, and so on and so forth. This entire structure is failed. It's failed the students, it's failed even you guys sitting here. I think there's doubt in each and every one of your hearts. I know there should have been schools that should have been torn down 15 years ago and not waited so long. The question I have, though, is how many millions of dollars have we spent on these dilapidated schools that now we have to tear down? There's no other choice. There's no alternative. Kids, in order for them to have a good education, they have to have a good atmosphere. Teachers, in order to retain good teachers, you have to have 21st century modern school system that can, you know, attract these teachers to it. What do we have here that will bring in new teachers to teach our children? I don't think we have anything to offer. We speak about how great Dearborn is, but at this point, Dearborn's on a decline. not on the, you know, not, there's nothing besides the Greenfield Village that half of us have seen like over 1 billion times. There's really, as residents, not much to offer. Our schools, we're about 2 years behind in education. Our kids are literally lacking 2 years behind. I can't speak for the non-English speaking students that have literally suffered the most catastrophe in English, the English language, literature. But in terms of math and science, I mean, we failed our kids in every sense during this COVID crisis. And, you know, now that they're returned back to school, we haven't really brought them up to speed. All we did was just rush homework to them and kind of just, you know, pass along as much as we can. But my kids don't come home with homework. They don't have hardly anything. When I look at their stuff, oh, we did it in class. It's already done. And I look at other, you know, districts and other parents and talk to them. Kids have stacks of homework, and, you know, they're trying to catch up to 2 years of education, and they're cramming it. And yes, these kids are retaining it, but there's so much that has happened in the last 2 years that I think the worst thing you could be doing right now is working on a bond. You've wasted, what, a year doing this? And instead of like bringing the kids that, I mean, we're gonna lose generations of kids in the future to the lack of education. So you guys have wasted an entire year instead of spending it on the students' education and how can we get curriculum into them for a $250 million bond that's gonna do what? Possibly maybe put one new school and maybe renovate a few bathrooms? That's absurd. West Bloomfield built an entire middle school for $58 million. Went from 700 students to 1,200 students, a double, or 1,400 students. And it's state of the art. And they did it all while they had kids in the school, built it right behind it. When we proposed that to you guys earlier in the beginning bond, you guys laughed at it as if it wasn't possible. But here you guys are proposing the same thing with this new bond. So I think we need to take a step back, assess the children, assess what they're lacking, and see how we can bring in teachers. We lost a ton of teachers in the last 2 years. I can't even begin to describe just the ones that I know. Went to Allen Park, Taylor. I mean, these are school districts that are way below us. Dearborn Heights. And for what? Just because, you know, we couldn't keep these teachers, not because of the students, but it was always the administration. It was always the red tape. It was always this building here and what goes on in here and the politics of the Dearborn administration is what, you know, had the teachers fleeing. Not because of the students were, you know, unmanageable. They didn't have the proper tools. It was because of you guys not funding them with the proper things. They didn't have the, you know, the kids didn't have the right curriculum. They didn't have the books. That all comes from here. You guys have had 2 years. You've got COVID funding. You have federal funding. You have state funding. You guys have resources that you could have spent instead of coming to the residents. We're at 60 mills. The city's gonna come to us with a bond. You guys are gonna come to us with a bond. The police and fire are gonna come to us with a bond. By the time we're done, we just might as well work and come in here every day with our pennies and just put it in the pot outside. I mean, it's just not feasible. It's not feasible for the city. You don't communicate with the city hall to figure out, you know, what will work in this city and what won't work in this city. The Dearborn City Hall, Dearborn Public Schools, fire and police, there's no consensus about everyone's like separately working on their own little thing. And you guys are fighting each other for what little we have in our pockets. And at some point, you'll get a real bad pushback from the residents. And I think you're starting to see that now. And, you know, something really important I wanted to say. I kind of lost my train of thought on it, but, you know, the entire structure of the school system has to change. The way we educate our children, the buildings, you guys in here, I can tell you that, I mean, I would want to say half of you are not in here for the interest of the children. I think you're in here for the interest of other things, and I don't want to sit here and name them, but you guys need to reassess whether you guys should be running for school board or not. Mr. Maleko, to you, with all due respect, I know you've worked really hard, but I don't know if your heart's really in Dearborn or not. I think you have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And I don't know if this board even helps you with or gives you the tools you need to even do your job. But before you get, before you guys rush into another bond, I just think you need to reassess what you guys are doing and what you guys want to work on. And then the mental health state of the students. Has anyone reached out to any of the kids just to check up on them and see where they're at with some of the issues that they're facing? I can tell you that there are so much issues going on in mental health alone that will cost a bond by itself to repair in the last 2 years. But nobody's even spoken about it. Yeah, there's some things here and there, workshops, but for the most part, teachers are, the atmosphere in the classroom is electric. It's like if you touch something, you're electrified. The communications between the students and the teachers is almost to the point of, it's like there's too much friction. Teachers are just overwhelmed. Kids are just looking for direction. They almost feel like, everyone's failed them. We're doing our best at home between work, the kids, between everything that's happening around the world. And, at the end of the day, these children are seeing war, they're seeing COVID and all the fear that surrounds it and death around everything. And then they go to schools. This is the only place they have as a refuge to get away from all the other bad elements that happen at home, whether abuse or whatever. And when they get to school, they almost get their abuse from the system itself. The system is supposed to be protecting them. And that's your responsibility, this school, body's responsibility. And you guys, all you think about is the bathrooms, the tiles, the this. Instead of letting this committee walk in there and seeing these tiles or seeing any of the stuff that's bad, why don't you pay for it and fix it? You have money. If Fortson needs anything, have it done. You have a few $1 million, you have more than $100 and some million that you guys can spend from. But if tiles are falling from the ceiling, just like any business, go out there and replace it. Why wait for a bunch of parents that don't know anything about structure or buildings or safety or even, a 21st educational system, an entire system from beginning to end? That's how long Dearborn, $1 billion wouldn't fix Dearborn's school system. Until you guys fix the minds and hearts of this body here, it doesn't matter how much you spend on a new school. It's still not going to fix the problem. The problem is education. We need to educate our children, and you're not doing that. You're failing our children. Half of these kids go off to school. When they get to college, they're at least 3 to 4 years behind on each and every single curriculum. And I've seen all of the blue ribbons, and I've seen all of the different things out there, and I'm not impressed. And I've even given it a year or two just to kind of look at it. It still hasn't impressed me. And Mayor Abdullah, has to sit here and deal with the city and everything that, some of the stuff that's coming out of there, it's appalling. And to know that we're at 60 mills, Livonia is at 38 mills. And it is fiscally responsible. It has great schools, great roads. It is even outgrown Dearborn. It has fire and police, and it is balanced. Every year it's balanced. And when they need something, they do it. But they're at 36 mills.
Thank you for your comments.
By the time you pass this bond and the city passes their bond, we'll be back up with inflation. Our price of homes taxes will be outrageous. We'll be back to 64, 65. So thank you for your time, you guys.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Jamal Al-Jagmi would like to speak to the board about the bond.
Good evening, everyone. So I was a part of the committee, and I do want to thank the district and all those that were involved for the collaboration. There's a couple of things that I did want to mention. One of them is I do agree that the bond is needed, and there's infrastructure, there's other needs that's critical, but we're not addressing some of our core problems, such as high school overcrowding. Fortson is at 2,800 students. Hallways are narrow. There's a lot of issues other than the bathrooms. And Fortson will get to 3,000 based on what I'm seeing in my neighborhood and the number of people having kids and such. So what are we doing about the overcrowding? Yes, it was mentioned 181 million to 195 million is for a new high school. I get it. That's almost a full bond. You can't do that, and I respect that. But there's other options. Etzel Ford is 12 acres. Fortson's 7 acres. So you really can't expand Fortson. You got to be really creative. There's other things you could do to help with the overcrowding, whether it's specialty schools that would take away from Fortson, whether it's an expansion of Etzel Ford. It was mentioned that St. Alphonsus, if I'm pronouncing it right, was available. It's not far from where I live. It's a school that could be used as a 9th grade. Why can't we be creative in such situation? You got to remember the pandemic, COVID. You got Fortson's hallways are so narrow. How are kids going to walk? Social distancing. So we got to think outside the box. Instead of saying 181 million, 195 million for a new high school, think of other options, because I want to support the bond. I want to sell it to the people that I know. But it's hard to sell it if the overcrowding issue is not addressed. We have to really give us some thoughts. We were told as the VIP committee that the board will decide on certain things. Example, an elementary school. My question is, where's the school going to be located at? And the response was the board is going to decide. Okay, so let the board decide. Take that 40 million, expand Etzel Ford, take some students away. My personal suggestions. St. Alphonsus, we talked about that, it's an option. So that's with the overcrowding issue. Another issue is when we talk about basic upkeeps or things like that, those are, the gentleman mentioned it, those are a part of the yearly fiscal, operational costs. But one thing I want to address is ESSER funds. I know I'm an IT professional. We really need to update our infrastructure and such. I agree. But can we use the ESSER fund for that? Because as our students connect more from home, as our student need capacity, those are things driven by the pandemic. You could leverage, it's 120 mil. I'm not sure if I got the number correct. You could use some of that technology, some of that money for technology. So I agree it's needed, but ESSER fund is there for. You could leverage some of those to address the needs of the students as kids and teachers do more Zoom and such. That's a justification. So, address the overcrowding at Etzel Ford, Dearborn High, and also utilize the ESSER fund for some of the things that's mentioned in the bond. That would take money away from the bond to be utilized for other things. And thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your service on the committee.
Mrs. Jawan Napa would like to come to speak to the board about costs.
Good evening, board. I'm Joanne Napa. I'm also was serving on the committee. So some of the things that, like everyone has talked about, I agree with a lot of what has been said. We all know that the schools need attention. That's not a joke. The gentleman, Mr. Hamadi, clearly frustrated, and he's right. One of the things that I want to talk about, and I think I've asked this question before, and it's really about the costs. And with all due respect to you, Mr. Wall, I appreciate all your hard work. You've been in and out with us the last weeks, and I appreciate all the reports and everything that he's put forth. One of the things that I would like to see is more of a comparison of the neighboring districts. Like, we're the third largest district, but the largest district in this state, Detroit, has proposed a $700 million proposal of not just rebuilding their schools, they're gonna be rebuilding 5 schools and renovating their schools. And one thing that stood out to me the most, so they would spend $281 million to rebuild 5 schools, another $296 million to renovate buildings, and $128 million to reopen previously closed schools, expand preschool, build additions onto existing buildings, and demolish. And these are all coming from ESSER funds. And I'm not saying that we have that kind of money. They have like $2.1 billion that came from ESSER funds. And I'm not saying that we have that kind of money, but the number that stood out to me the most was $281 million to rebuild 5 schools. But we're talking about $188 million to build a high school, or $42 million to build an elementary school. Why are those costs so high? Yeah, this district can fit 5 in there. Like, what are they doing different? I'm just looking to see like comparison. Like, what are they doing different? I'm not saying that the companies that came out and did those assessments for you are lying, but I mean, why are they getting these numbers and we're getting numbers that are completely out of the ballpark? That's my concern, and I feel like for transparency issues, we need, and there was one district in the South, and I think we've sent this article out once, recently. They had a bond. They went out to every single building that was gonna be impacted by the bond and put like orange tape on everything that was gonna get fixed. So if a bathroom stall was gonna get fixed, they'd put an orange tape around it for transparency, so that they could say like, this is where your money's going, okay? I feel like that's part of what this community wants to see. They wanna see more transparency. We have angry parents, and I'm one of them, but I'm also at a point where I love this city. I wouldn't be here, and I'm not originally from this city, but I love this city, okay? I love being here, I love raising my kids here, I love the schools. We have good schools, but if we're gonna continue to treat our schools like they're, second rate, we're gonna feel the effects of them later. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Ayana Hussein would like to come to speak to the board about key takeaways from the committee's conversation about a future bond.
Thank you. I also served on the VIP committee as well. I have a lot of different thoughts, but I'll just keep it short because I do agree with every single thought that came from any members from the VIP committee, as well as Sam Hamadi. The only thing that I recommend in the future is to not have a VIP committee. The reason I say that is because I don't believe we were really given the effort of what we wanted to do. Like, for instance, at our first meeting, and I talked with other committee members that agreed on the same thing, I didn't even realize until March 10 on the last meeting that we weren't really deciding anything. All we're doing is ranking a bunch of things and calling it a day. That's literally all we did. Sure, we had 6 meetings and we talked about multiple different things and about, we visited like 6 schools, or I think a couple more than that. And we saw things and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but we didn't really do much. We're not telling you, like this list, it's a bathroom, security, whatever it is. It doesn't say exactly where it's going, and that's an issue. Obviously, you are the board that will decide that, and you have to be transparent with it. Otherwise, you're gonna have another failed bond just like you did in 2019. And back in 2019, I was under 18. And I saw what was going on. I saw like a big no side, a big yes side, et cetera, all this politics, and that's what's gonna happen again in November. You're gonna have another failed bond if there's no transparency of what's gonna happen with this money. And that's why I recommend not to have another VIP committee again, is because at the end of the day, we don't decide anything. All we did was rank a bunch of things and just show it to you, which you could have done yourselves. I believe maybe the board could have just visited all the schools, ranked the same things we did, discussed the same things, maybe did a survey with the community and called it a day, because that's literally all we did. So the board could have just done that, and it would save the money you spent on the dinners for the VIP committee. It would have saved money on probably
the staff being there that night, the tech being there that night to show us presentations, all of these types of things. All of this money could have been saved from having a VIP committee, and it could have been just done, I'm sure, with a couple meetings yourselves, you know, just viewing the schools, ranking what you think needs to be done. If anything, the bathroom has appalled me. Yeah, I can understand how the bathrooms isn't like a #1 issue, but at the same time, you have, especially girls, you have girls in elementary school, you know, getting their period with no way of knowing what a period is, first of all. Second of all, where are the period products in the elementary school? Nowhere to be found. Maybe there's a couple in the, you know, the office, but that's all there is. You have middle schoolers with no way of access where to find period pads, maybe from a couple teachers that will offer them out of their own money, maybe some in the office, but that's all there is. There should be one in every single stall. There's not even a trash can in the stalls. You don't even have bathrooms, you don't even have like the door to the bathroom stall. Like when I went to McDonald Elementary, it wasn't that great. Like there was things falling apart already as it is, and that was back in maybe 2007 or 8. But now it's even worse, and it doesn't seem like it's been fixed at all. It doesn't seem like anything's been done. And that's a big problem, because I can tell you in 7th grade, my family moved me to Canton. They moved me to PSEP, and I can understand what you're saying about their infrastructure, maybe state-of-the-art building, whatever it is. But I mean, they're not that great either. They were very similar to, you know, because I went to Eunice as well. I went to Eunice for 6th grade. It was very similar to Eunice. And Eunice is an amazing school. I loved it. I loved the experience there. But the reason I came back here and I moved here when I turned 19 years old is because I love this city so much. I want my kids personally to go to McDonald Elementary, because I wouldn't be the way I am right now. I wouldn't be able to speak in front of a crowd or any of these things without the impact of McDonald Elementary. And that's why I came back here. But it seems like we're all going to move out because of what's not happening. So that really just concludes what I want to say. And the same thing about what Sam Hamedi said about mental health. I used to work in a psychiatric office. I worked there for 4 years. The amount of kids that came to us after March 2020, after the schools closed, was drastic. I'd never seen so many patients call per day. And I can tell you that because I was on the management side, so I saw the amount of calls come in. I saw the amount of new intake patients, and we're in Dearborn. We're Apex Behavioral Health in Dearborn. Everything has increased, and it's like, you know, longer wait times to see a patient, to see the kid. Then you have to make sure both parents agree. You have to have the parents sign the consent forms, all of these things. Everything has increased. The workload increased in the, you know, the medical field for, you know, the younger generation. And that doesn't seem to be like that's being addressed either. So there's so many things that are not being addressed, and I feel like we're wasting so much time. I feel like all we did from January to March, we just wasted so much time in this VIP committee, and that could have been done in like 1 or 2 meetings. Just go visit the schools, rank some stuff, and call it a day. So in the future, I do not recommend a VIP committee unless we have the authority to actually look at the analysis reports and say, okay, yeah, bathrooms, this school, this school, this school. Because we didn't even visit all the schools. Not all of them, only some of them. We're able to, yeah, like I said, we're able to say, okay, bathrooms, Forts and Etzel, et cetera, why? Because Etzel, it was like one bathroom, there's like a lock on it. So same thing, security, this school, this school, this school. We didn't do any of that. We were not allowed to do any of that. And so I don't think there's a point of the committee then. We're just really doing nothing. And it's a waste of everybody's time. It's a waste of your time, your money, and our time as well. That's all I have to say. But, and again, I really do appreciate that we're able to be here and that we're able to speak, and that you're able to give them the time to speak as well, because these are true thoughts of the community, and this is what's going to happen in November if the same things and the same mistakes are repeated from 2019. It's not going to be approved again, and it's going to be even worse after that, especially if the millage rate drops to, I think it was 1.8, some number like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. One thing I do just want to say real quickly, there's been a lot of statements made about things that we haven't done, and there's a lot of things that we have done that people just aren't aware of. We have added a counselor to every single building to help address some of the emotional and social needs that our students are having. There's a whole lot of things that are being done throughout the district that people aren't aware of, and that's probably on us for not being more responsive to or getting our message out there. And I just have to say one more thing. I've worked with the members of this board, and I know that every one of them cares deeply about this community and the children that we serve. So.
It's just adjournment after that.
I'm sorry?
Next is adjournment.
Oh,
No.
was there another?
Board
Okay, I thought that
discussion.
was it.
Nope, that was it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next item, please. Adjournment, that's it?
Adjournment.
Okay.
No, on the other agenda shows board discussion now.
Oh,
Sorry.
Sorry.
I see it, yes.
Oh, yep.
Now, we've already had some discussion, so are we ready for more discussion? Go ahead, next item, please.
I guess board discussion?
Madam President?
Yes, please, trustee.
I
Mendoza.
appreciate, first of all, I would like to thank every single member of the VIP committee who contributed their time and effort into those meetings. Obviously, the last speaker, Miss Eliana, thank you so much. I'm saying, right, my last name? Thank you as well for serving and giving us your perspective, and I'm sorry that you feel this way, that it was not a good time, or you didn't spend your time wisely on this committee. The reason why we have committees like these is because we would like to hear the community's input. While we were elected to make those tough decisions, but we do rely on community's input all the time to tell us what would they like in our district. I talk to residents all the time in my neighborhood and everywhere I go, and they pull me aside and they talk to me about what they would like in our schools. I am one of the board members, and you have 7 others who are also elected to make those decisions. But we do need and we value every single resident's point of view. Whether I agree with that resident or not, I would love to hear their perspective. And I would like to possibly, get into a civil discussion and talk about reasonable things that we can agree on. To say that, we could have done it ourselves. We could have went to the schools, and I've been gladly that now, the restrictions have been loosened, and March Reading Month, I've been to 7 or 8 different schools, and I've seen the conditions of our schools. I've seen the happy faces of our students back in the classroom, but I've seen every time I go to a school that is brand new like Eunice, or almost brand new, 10 years or 15 years, and what is it?
Yeah, it's close to
17 years,
20,
guys,
yeah.
jeez. That warms my heart to see a pool like that, where it's a state of the art, all of the parents are there, and again, HVAC, very cool building, and cool meaning in both cool and also cool as of AC. But to say that it was a waste of time, I disagree with that, and I respectfully disagree. I think other members of the committee here, I appreciate their time. I think they made their input with the administration, and some have voiced their concern here publicly, which I do appreciate. Some have voiced their concern to us via correspondence, and some went even on social media and showed their opinion and talked about what they think of this committee. And once again, we rely on residents. I don't have ears. Trustee Thorpe doesn't have ears and eyes at every school, so is all of our other colleagues to see everything. And that's why we rely on you residents who elected us to tell us what's right and what's wrong and what we need to do. And I hope that this committee would give us a lot of input, and they did. They did a great presentation. Some of the members here spoke, and they spoke about various things that they would like us to focus on. And this is what democracy is. Obviously, you were not given authority to make a decision, because we were elected to make those ultimate decisions. And we take ownership of these decisions, whether they were right or wrong, or they were right on point, or they were off the mark. And sometimes failure doesn't mean that we were not on the right side of history. Now, whether you were for the bond last year or not, the majority of the residents are definitely feeling the heat of taxes, especially the new residents. And that's not only schools' problem. It's everybody's. It's a city issue, county, and I'm not trying to throw the ball here at them. But I would like to invite you to look at again, the condition of our buildings, and also look into how much other districts who are of comparable size of ours are spending on infrastructure versus ours. That will give you a lot of points as far as that comparison. And again, I mentioned this before, that we always get compared to Northville and Canton and other schools. And yeah, you could do that comparison, and sometimes it is fair comparison when you compare even academics. You know, a lot of people don't pay attention to affluent families, high income, low income, other things. And I'm not here to give excuses or anything. We should not be giving excuses. In Dearborn, we strive to be the best. We try to be leading the nation or leading the district and leading other districts in doing the right things for our school district. We have a long way in equity. We have a long way of achieving a playing level field where our schools have the same services. Where it depends, unfortunately, right now in the entire states where you live is what you get the best service. I mean, I'm not gonna go in detail, but I would invite you to visit Kroger in East Dearborn, Kroger in West Dearborn, and see the conditions and the service that you get, just as an example. But
Barry?
I would like to close with this. The other point is, I know this has mentioned a lot, that we are here in this district, and I'm not going to talk about our intentions here. I think our actions speak louder than our words as far as how much we care about these schools as individual members, and each individual member can tell you about what they do, but I leave my actions, myself, speak for that. But I don't take things personal. I appreciate all the criticism that we receive. And I think some of them are well taken, but some are definitely off the mark. And we appreciate that. And that's why we live in an amazing society where we can agree to disagree. Thank you, Madam President.